Hey, it's a new year and time for a new show for the Light Ted audience. This show is going to be brought to you by Get a Grip Management, but guess what? Michael Colligan's not going to be involved on this one. It's going to be Greg, Eric, myself, and Mark Jewell from Selling Energy. And it's called the Sales Synopsis. We're going to take different sales topics, sum them up in quick 15-minute sessions or less, and gives you something you can take home with you and help you sell more. But before we get into today's topic, this episode is brought to you by TCP, the craziest people in lighting, tcpi.com. Crazy in a good way. They're crazy because they have everything they need. They make their product, and when you're out selling something, you know that TCP is going to have it. You can sell the idea, sell the concept, and then figure out the Kelvin temperature after the fact because TCP's got it. If they don't have it, they'll make it for you. So check those guys out. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So today the topic I want to get into is something that you do on Selling Energy. You do different webinars. And this one was called 10 Success Tips from Sales Rock Stars to Jumpstart Your New Year. Why did you get into this, or what was this all about?
You know, it's funny. After having 11,000 people pass through the sales training, you pick up a lot of tips and tricks. I've been a student of sort of motivational literature and sales success strategies and tips for 30. I've been actually selling for more than 40 years. But occasionally you get some stuff from literature, you get some stuff from the graduates. I thought it wouldn't be a bad idea to kick off the new year with an assemblage of 10 of them. So we originally did this as a 1-hour webinar, but I think we can speed date through these 10 points and get the messages across to your audience in a much more concise fashion.
Perfect. And I'm going to dive right into them. The first one I see on here is I visualize successful outcomes before and after sleep.
You know, I took a course in neurolinguistic programming back in 1987. It was right around the same time I was getting involved with Tony Robbins. I did his live 4-day thing, walking on hot coals barefoot, 1,200 degrees, that sort of thing. So I was really into this motivational stuff. And neurolinguistic programming, one of the things they talk about is where how the mind is interacting with your body and how your thoughts really drive everything. And one of the things they talk about is the eye positions. You know, if you're right-handed, you're thinking about past visual experience. It's going to be in the upper left-hand quadrant. And I'm right-handed. So when I go to bed at night, I visualize. I close my eyes. I put my eyes up in the upper left-hand visual field, and I visualize a positive outcome for the next day. And then I go to sleep. And when I get up in the morning, before I open my eyes and get up and shower and shave, I do the same thing. I look up in the upper left-hand visual field, and I visualize a positive outcome. If you're left-handed, by the way, you do the opposite. And if you're curious about any of that woo-woo stuff I just said, you look online and research neurolinguistic programming, and you'll find some very, very exciting ways where you can harness your brain and your thoughts and really make things manifest.
And you're saying you do this every day?
I do. And you say, what is an example of a successful outcome? Let's say you have a big meeting with a client next day. Well, you should visualize. You close your eyes, you look at the upper left-hand visual field, and visualize that client saying at the end of your meeting tomorrow, wow, this has been really an effective meeting. You're the most professional salesperson I've ever met in this field. Where do I sign? Or something like that. I mean, just visualize a positive outcome. And you're basically making a holographic video for yourself as to how this thing's going to come down. In fact, if you want to kick it up a notch, as Emeril Lagasse used to say on the Food Network, if you make a holographic image in 5 different dimensions, what the outcome is going to look like, sound like, smell like, feel like, taste like, and really visualize that as coming true. When it does come true, and it probably will, it will feel like deja vu because you had such a rich visualization of the positive outcome the night before. You may think I'm crazy. Maybe I spent too much in California, but it definitely works. Try it.
Visualize, make it come true. I'm going to try it tonight for you. Number 2.
That's right.
I deputize everyone on my payroll to sell.
A perfect example of this would be, electrical distributor, for example, has a driver, and let's say they're delivering pipe and wire. They have 2 choices when they get to the customer's warehouse. They could either be looking at their smartphone for ESPN reruns, or they could be looking up into the ceiling of the warehouse where they just did the delivery to see if they have lighting fixtures that could be upgraded, luminaires for the purists on the podcast. And they could be counting them, and then they could write on the back of the bill of lading, boom, while I was there, saw 87,000 watt metal halides. Biz Dev ought to tap that guy on the shoulder, because I know today I just delivered pipe and wire, but it looks like they're ripe for a lighting retrofit. It also happens with customer service people, or even auditors in the field. People typically tend to have looser lips when they're talking to someone other than the salesperson in your organization. So if that person who's a technical professional, a field engineer, an auditor, maybe a delivery driver, makes a comment like, have you ever thought about doing this? they figure that person's not in for commission. They're just making an honest technical observation, and that's going to spur the interest so that person maybe to reach out to the sales department and say, hey, your driver happened to make a mention of the fact that I've got very inefficient lighting, and the utility is going to give me half the price of replacing it. Do you know anything about this? And of course, the biz dev people will jump right into the role, and they'll give the customer or the prospect some answers. But by having everybody singing from the same hymnal and really understanding how your offerings create value for the customers, it's going to open up all sorts of accidental sales, which are not very accidental at all. They're actually very intentional.
And I love that you say that sell. So a lot of people define the word of sell as it has to be yes or no now. It's a process. And all of this stuff
No,
can help warm
absolutely.
it up and get to the point. So that's awesome.
Yep. Yeah, and
All
if
right.
everybody on staff actually just looks left and right or up and down, they're going to find all sorts of opportunities to upsell and cross sell and upserve your offerings to their customers.
I agree. Number 3, I partner with vendors that I can make into heroes.
My father, God rest his soul, 3 days ago would have been his 90th birthday. He actually passed away 3 years ago at the age of 87 on the 4th of July after the fireworks stopped. But he told me, in fact, it's the first sentence of my book, the best way to prosper yourself is to prosper others. So one of the best ways you could work to get great quality leads is to identify vendors who I call them the co-opetition, people who sell to the same customers you sell to, but they sell something very different. And so there's no channel conflict, no confusion amongst customers. The example I often give in our Selling at Six curriculum is a spring water vendor who sells to commercial office buildings partnering with someone who does commercial plant maintenance. And so when the spring water vendor delivers the water to the office building's customers or tenants who are already his customer, he takes his hand truck in, delivers the water to the kitchen, and in the meantime he can look left and right and see if the company has his tenant, his customer has any plants that would merit commercial plant maintenance. And when the commercial plant maintenance person visits his customers, where do they go to get the water to water the plants? They go in the kitchen. And when they're in the staff kitchen, they can look down on the floor and see how many bottles of spring water are down there, what form factor the bottles are, and how many empties are there, that sort of thing. And by swapping leads with each other, they wind up getting a lot of business because their customer bases were not that overlapping initially. But at the end of the exercise, 1-2 years later, almost most of their customers are shared because they basically turned their fellow vendor onto their existing customer base.
Yeah, great idea, and something I use to get a lot of sales too. So I love it.
Yep.
Number 4, I adopt the personality traits of successful sales professionals.
This is probably more detailed than we have time to get into, but there was a very good book written recently on the 10 qualities of high performing salespeople. And 5 of the qualities are ones that you'd want to have inherent, and 5 of them are things that you could teach people. Confidence, you could probably teach. Curiosity, you may not be able to teach. Resiliency and being immortal, you probably can't teach that. But you can teach how to ask better questions and active listening. So I think what you need to do is you need to figure out like what makes a top performing salesperson a top performing salesperson. And the attitudes and outlooks that I've seen in my career are exactly that. They're hardworking, they're focused, they understand that they're out to prosper people. It's the old joke about the best waiter. It's not a joke; it's an aphorism that the best waiters and waitresses who make the most money don't count their tips until the end of the night because they're not keeping score during the time. They're making sure that the person has a great time in the restaurant. They're not trying to count tips and rate diners. But there are some personality traits of successful sales professionals. Among them are the ability to just have water like off a duck's back for rejection, asking better questions, being genuinely curious, having greater empathy and concern for people. And essentially, I think one of the most important characteristics is really the idea that I'm not here to sell cigarettes to toddlers. I'm here to sell you something that's going to make your life better. And therefore, I feel no embarrassment whatsoever asking to have a relationship, asking better questions, asking to extend the relationship, asking for referrals, because I know I'm giving you something of genuine value. People who sneak into the relationship saying, I got to get a sale, I got to make my numbers, I'm behind my number, all that stuff, forget about it. People who take the initial no as a shutdown of the relationship, you don't want to go there either. You need somebody who's really, they realize that they're here to deliver a gift. And they experience that, they express that in every interaction they have with the customer.
The one that stands out to me just because it relates to me personally is curiosity, and that's something I've always been accused of, but it's in a good thing. Like you can use curiosity to help you sell, to help you
Yep.
learn more about it, so that you can sell more. That's why I'm curious. I want
Yes.
to know. Got to dive into
Yep.
it.
Yeah, Bob
Um,
Burg wrote a lot of books on networking, and one of the books he wrote was Go Giver, the Go Giver, and they talk about why do certain athletes and entertainers make so much money, because they create so much value for a lot of different people. And if you're a go giver, you're always looking to put positive energy out there. No one ever thinks that you're motivated just by making a sale. It's a relationship, and you're trying to create value, and then psychic debt will be built, and they will want to do business with you and send their friends.
for sure. Number 5, I adopt rock star habits.
You know, I'll tell you, the best way I can explain this is when I first started working in sales for someone else. I mean, I've been selling since I was probably 14 years old, but back in 1983, I took a job with a company that was selling on the phone, and I would do 200 dials a day. It would take me a long time. I was working 12 hours a day. 200 dials. We were playing the time zone, so I could start at 7 in the morning and end at 7 at night, and I would still be within a reasonable calling time for whom I was calling. 200 dials a day. I would have 40 conversations. About 10 of those people would allow me to send them a brochure, which back in the day was, by snail mail. My assistant sent them out. And then I would pitch the 10 people who allowed me to send them brochures exactly 1 week ago, and I generally make one sale. And I'll tell you, the rockstar habit was absolutely keeping track of my numbers. I wouldn't leave that desk unless I had made 200 dials, talked to at least 40 people, sent at least 10 pieces of literature out, and made at least one sale. I couldn't always control the sale I made, but at that rate of rockstar habit, just the keeping track, setting goals and keeping my metrics, I was making $175,000 at the age of 24 back in 1983 when that was real money. And
Yeah,
so that's just one of the examples of a rock star habit that you just say, listen, I know what it takes, a numbers game to get this done, and I'm going to be disciplined enough to go and follow through with it.
I love it. Number 6, I believe in rock star principles.
Um, I think I kind of teased this initially with the concept of always creating value. If you always approach every relationship as how I can benefit this person, even when you go to a networking event, a lot of salespeople, as opposed to sales professionals, they'll go to a networking event and they'll say, "How many business cards? How many leads can I get? How many sales can I make? How many people can I get to call later?" The person who goes into a network event as a sales professional has the principle of, no, my goal is to create as much value as possible for the people in this room. So who can I put together? Maybe they make sales between themselves. Who can I share experiences with of peers that we've helped in their industry, so that whether or not they do business with me, they're going to create value. They're going to derive value from that conversation. So that's one of the key rockstar principles. I mean, there are lots of them in our Selling Six curriculum, but one of the ones that I most resonate with is whenever you're having a conversation, and by the way, this makes it a lot easier to get meetings with people. If people are convinced that no matter whether you do business with them or not, in the end, they're going to derive value from the meeting because you're going to give them valuable information in that context, they're going to give you a meeting just like that because they want to know the information that you have. And they'll naturally say, wow, if you gave me that many gold nuggets before we became his client, I can only imagine how much gold the guy's going to give me after I become his client. So that's another rockstar principle. Just always be giving, giving, giving. It gets back to that Bob Berg book. There's some alliteration for you. The Bob Berg book, Go Giver.
Love it. Very good. Number 7, I avoid pitfalls.
One of the biggest pitfalls I think salespeople fall into is, well, two of them. One, they do things that they shouldn't be doing in prime time, like paperwork, expense reports, lead research and things like that. And number two, they don't. Well, let me just summarize it this way. Let me back up and summarize it this way. They don't sell. They don't spend as much time as they should selling. There was a statistic that I heard the other day that said the average salesperson spends a third of their time selling, a third of their time writing up marketing materials, emails, and things like that are not systematized or modeled templates. And as a result, they're spending a third of their time writing stuff that's probably substandard, and then a third of their time on administrative BS. Can you imagine if you discipline yourself to avoid the pitfall of getting sucked into non-sales related stuff during your workday, and if you allowed yourself to adopt a systematic approach to outbound marketing, email templates, voicemail scripts, cold call scripts, references, things, exhibits that you send people, links that you can easily copy and paste, adding, always having your CRM open so you're contemporaneously taking notes instead of scribbling crap down and then transcribing it later, which most times you're too tired to do. So avoiding the pitfalls that a lot of salespeople suffer from could double or maybe even triple the you have to sell. And of course, your income is going to reflect it.
Definitely. And I think it's always a constantly striving for efficiency, finding things that you can get rid of or somebody else can maybe
Absolutely.
handle for you so you can focus on what you do
Or you can
best.
automate it. You can automate,
Yeah. Number 8, I plan my values, purpose, and mission before planning goals.
When I graduated from the Wharton School back in 1992, first thing I did was I bought Tony Robbins' then most recent book. It was published in 1992 called Awaken the Giant Within. And in that book, it's a wonderful, it's over 300 pages, and it talks about each chapter. If they start with what's your value, what are your values, what are you moving toward values, what are you moving away from values, what's your purpose in life, what's your mission in life, and only then do you start fabricating your goals or fashioning your goals, because they now at that point you know that these goals would be supporting your values. A lot of people, I remember, I was in California back in the 80s. There was a guy who was in the very early 80s. He was a brain surgeon, very, very successful neurosurgeon. And after he's 40 years old, he finally realized that he didn't want to be a brain surgeon, that his father wanted to be a surgeon. And he really just wanted to bake bread. So had he known his values, he probably wouldn't have gone through medical school and all this other hard work to become a brain surgeon. Instead, he would have gotten into baking. And shortly thereafter, he had 13. He was the founder of, his name is Ron, I believe. He's the founder of Monterey Bay Baking Company. He had like 13 bakeries within another 5 or 6 years. And, some of the most respected bread on the Monterey Peninsula, because he really wanted to be in the bread baking business, not a brain surgeon. And so if you start with values, then go to purpose and mission, and then talk about your goals and then your action steps, you'll be much more effective. And essentially, you will have the why baked into your gestalt. So whenever it gets tough, you'll know why you're doing those goals and actions. If you start the other way around, you'll fall off the wagon all too quickly.
That's perfect. Number 9, I plan and track activity-based metrics.
A lot of people say you can't just wish sales. In fact, there's a great book by Rick Page called "Hope Is Not a Strategy." It's one of the 700 books we have in our sales library. But one of the things that I think salespeople, not sales professionals, salespeople fall down on is they don't actually commit themselves to a activity-based protocol. They'll say, "I got to make this many sales," but you can't really control the sales. You can control the activities, but you can't control the sales. Now, the better you get at doing those activities, true, but you have to at least put the effort in. And as I said before, I wouldn't end a day without understanding: did I make my 200 calls? Did I make my 40 packages sent out? Or talk discussions? Did I send 10 packages out this day? And did I make a sale? And if I didn't, I would then increase my goals the next day, because you have to keep yourself accountable. You can't manage what you don't measure. And unfortunately, a lot of salespeople don't really measure much. And as a result, they're astonished when they come at the end of the quarter and they're behind the numbers. In fact, I'll tell you a little trick. Excel's a really easy thing to use, right? In fact, I had a formula. I would take the amount of sales I made that day, and the little formula would convert how much my annual income would be if I did that every day. And I'll tell you something. On the weekdays, when I realized that I'd make $17,000 a year in income if I did that every day, it scared the hell out of me. And it would just immediately shock me back into higher productivity, because who wants to end the year at $17,000? Okay, so that's another way of tracking activity-based metrics and automating some of it with a sales enablement tool that keeps you honest.
I think that's more important now than ever, is really getting after that so you can build up your sales in the future. And something I struggle with personally, but I got to get better at too, so we can all work on that.
Life's a journey.
Number 10. That's right. I
Yeah.
master my schedule to avoid sales slumps.
This one's interesting because if you really take a look at how much selling time you have, people say, well, what's your goal for the year? I want to make $200,000. Okay, well, what is that? That's 2 weeks off. It's 50 weeks. You're going to make $4,000 a week. $4,000 a week. So you think that's what it is. But say, wait a second, let's back up. How many selling weeks do you actually have? And then you deduct the holidays, you deduct your real vacations, you deduct any sick days that your children have. You have to take off from school, take them out of school. Maybe if you're lucky, you have 40 weeks of selling time. You throw in a pandemic there and some social distancing, you may be down to 22 weeks. But there are 2 reasons that people run into sales slumps. Number one, they don't increase their activity before they're about to go into a lull. Like, for example, they don't redouble their number of calls and emails and everything else sent out before they get into the holiday paralysis, Thanksgiving and Hanukkah and Christmas. And number 2, they don't get seduced by saying, wow, I had a great month, and then they relax. Because what happens is you have a great month and you relax, and then you don't do all the spade work that you need to get a great month the next month. So you have most salespeople, not sales professionals, have performance that's very cyclical. And it doesn't have to be. If you really are honest with yourself, how many selling opportunities you have for the year, and you don't get seduced by relaxing every time you have a big sale, you're going to do fine. You're going to do a much more even keel. Actually, it'd be not even even keel. It'd be an upward trajectory. And in fact, I'll just end with one observation that an old sales mentor of mine had. When you make a sale, the last thing you want to happy hour and celebrate because you're so pumped up, you have so much adrenaline, so much positive energy. You got to make another sale because you got to harness that positive activity, that positive emotion, that adrenaline. Um, I guess looking at the dating world, the reason you always had extra girlfriends or had people approaching you to be a girlfriend in college is when you had a girlfriend. When you didn't have a girlfriend, you can't get anybody to date. So if you're all positively motivated, you got a loving girlfriend, that's when everybody's attracted to you like a magnet. Not that you're going to cheat on her, but I'm just saying the same thing happens in sales. When you
Yep.
do a sale, that's the time to pick up the phone and make another one because now you're pumped. People can feel it, and then you wind up making second, third, fourth sales, and at some point you don't even want to go home because you're on a roll.
Yeah, no, you're
So
you're
there you have it.
100% right on that. Yeah, and
There you go.
from the sales experience I have too, unfortunately, if you want to be in sales, you don't get to relax. Sorry, you keep selling.
I joke with people I have a cell phone pocket in my pajamas, and of course we have
Yes,
clients from New Zealand to London and everywhere in between. So people call me at all sorts of, text me at all sorts of crazy time zones. But I love it. I mean, and people say, well, you're a workaholic, Mark. No. I'm a workaholic. I have fun, and people can sense
yes,
that, and they want to do more business with me because they know that I'm out to, as my father said, my late father said, the best way to prosper yourself is to prosper others. And that's probably a good tip to end this particular podcast with. It's a good punchline to live by.
absolutely. So you heard it right there from Mark Jewell, myself. Check out Selling Energy. He's got all these great tips on it, and we're gonna have some more shows coming up this year. But before we head out, TCPI, the craziest people in lighting. Check them out. TCPI.com. Thanks for your time on the Sales Synopsis.